हेलो फ्रेंड्स, हमारा चैप्टर नंबर 12 है इकोसिस्टम। 12.1 इकोसिस्टम स्ट्रक्चर एंड फंक्शन, 12.2 प्रोडक्टिविटी, 12.3 डिकम्पोजिशन, 12.4 एनर्जी फ्लो, 12.5 ecological pyramids. An ecosystem can be visualized as a functional unit of nature where living organisms interact among themselves and also with the surrounding physical environment. Ecosystem varies greatly in size from a small pond to a large forest on a sea. Many ecologists regard the entire biosphere as a global ecosystem, as a composite of all four local ecosystems on Earth. Since this system is too much big and complex to be studied at one time, it is convenient to divide it into two basic categories, namely the terrestrial and aquatic. Forest, grassland, and desert are some examples of terrestrial ecosystem. Pond, lake, wetland, river, and estuary are some examples of aquatic ecosystems. Crop fields and an aquarium may also be considered as man-made ecosystem. We will first look at the structure of the ecosystem in order to appreciate the fit productivity. Transfer of energy, food chain, web, or nutrient cycling, and the output degradation and energy loss. We will also look at the relationships, cycles, chains, waves that are created as a result of this energy flows within the system of their interrelationship. 12.1 ecosystem structure and function. In earlier classes, you have looked at the various components of the environment, abiotic and biotic. You studied how the individual biotic and abiotic factors affected each other and their surrounding. Let us look at these components in a more integrated manner and see how the flow of energy takes place within these components of the ecosystem. Interaction of biotic and abiotic components result in a physical structure that is characteristic of for each type of ecosystem. Identification and enumeration of plant and animal species of an ecosystem gives its species composition, vertical distribution of different species occupying different levels of is called stratification. For example, trees occupy top vertical strata or layer of a forest. Shrubs the second, and herbs and grasses occupy the bottom layer. The components of the ecosystem are seen to function as a unit when you consider the following aspects: first, productivity; second, decomposition; third, energy flow; fourth, nutrient cycle. To understand the ethos of an aquatic ecosystem, let us take a small pond as an example. This is fairly a self-sustainable unit and rather simple ecosystem. A pond is a shallow water body in which all the above mentioned four basic components of an ecosystem are well exhibited. The abiotic components is the water will all dissolved inorganic and organic substances and the rich soil deposit at the bottom of the pond, the solar input, the cycle of temperature, daylight, day length, and other climatic conditions regulate the rate of function of the entire pond. The autotrophic components include the phytoplankton, some algae, and the floating, uh, submerged, and marginal plants found at the edges. The consumers are represented by the zooplankton, the free swimming and bottom dwelling are abundant in the bottom of the pond. This system performs all the functions of any ecosystem and of the biosphere as a whole, that is conversion of inorganic into organic material with the help of the radiant energy of the sun by the autotrophs, consumption of the autotrophs by heterotrophs, decomposition and mineralization of the dead matter to release them back for reuse by the autotrophs. These events are repeated over the over length. Over again, there is under and direction unidirectional movement of energy towards the higher trophic level, and its dissipation and loss is as heat to the environment. Of 12.2 productivity, a constant input of solar energy is the basic requirement for any ecosystem to function and sustain. Primary production is defined as the amount of biomass or organic matter produced per unit area over a time period by plants during photosynthesis. It is expressed in terms of weight, gram minus square, or energy kilocalorie per meter square. The rate of biomass production is called productivity. It is expressed in terms of gram meters per square year per one or kilocalorie per meter square per year. To compare the productivity of different ecosystems, it can be divided into gross primary productivity (GPP) and net primary productivity (NPP). Gross primary productivity of an ecosystem is the rate of production of organic matter during photosynthesis. The considerable amount of GPP is utilized by plants is in the respiration. Gross primary productivity minus respiration losses are in respiration. Gross primary productivity minus respiration losses is the net primary productivity NPP. Gross primary productivity minus small capital R is equal to NPP net primary productivity. Net primary productivity is the available biomass for the consumption of heterotrophs, herbivores, and decomposers. Secondary productivity is defined as the rate of formation of new organic matter by consumers. Primary productivity depends on the plant species inhabiting the particular area. It also depends on the variety of environmental factors, availability of nutrients, and photosynthetic capacity of plants. Therefore, it varies in different types of ecosystems. The annual net primary productivity of the whole biosphere is approximately 170 billion tons derived of organic matter of this despite occupying about 70% of the surface, and the productivity of the oceans are slowly only 55 billion tons. Rest of course is on land. Discuss the main reason for the low productivity of oceans with your teacher. 12.3 Decomposition. You may have heard of the earthworm being referred to as the farmers friend. This is so because they help in the breakdown of complex organic matter as well as in loosening of the soil. Similarly, decomposers break down complex organic matter into inorganic substances like carbon dioxide, water, and nutrients, and the process is called a decomposition. Dead plant remains such as leaves, bark, flowers, and dead remains of animals, including fecal matter, constitutes the dendrites, which is the raw material for decomposition. The important steps in the process of decomposition are fragmentation, leaching, catabolism, humidification, and mineralization. Detritivores, example earthworm, break down dendrites, dendritus of into smaller particles. This process is called fragmentation. By the process of leaching, water soluble inorganic nutrients go down into the soil horizon and get precipitated as unavailable salts. Bacterial and fungal enzymes degrade dendritus into the simpler inorganic substances. This process is called as catabolism. It is important to note that all the above steps in decomposition operate simultaneously on the dendrites and the detritus. Figure 12.1. Humidification and mineralization occur during decomposition in the soil. Humidification leads to accumulation of a dark colored amorphous substance called humus that is highly resistant to microbial action and undergoes decomposition at an extremely slow rate. Being colloidal in nature, it serves as a reservoir of nutrients. So the humus is further degraded by some microbes, and release of inorganic nutrients occur by the process known as mineralization. Decomposition is largely an oxygen requiring process. The rate of decomposition is controlled the chemical by chemical composition of detritus and climatic factors. In a particular climatic condition, decomposition rate rich in nitrogen and water soluble substances like sugars. Temperature temperatures and soil moisture are the most important climatic factors that regulate decomposition through their effects on the activities of soil microbes. Warm and moist environment favor decomposition, whereas low temperature and anaerobics inhibit decomposition, resulting in build up of organic materials. 12.4 Energy flow. Except for the deep sea hydrothermal ecosystem, sun is the only source of energy for all ecosystems of earth. Of the incident of solar radiation, less than the 50% of it is of photosynthetically active radiation, PR. We know that plants and photosynthetic bacteria autotrophs fix suns from Note that plants and photosynthetic bacteria fix sun's radiant energy to make food from simple organic materials. The plants capture only 2 to 10% of the PR, and this small amount of energy sustains the entire living world. So it is very important to know how the substance sustains the entire living world. So it is very important to know how the solar energy captured by plants flows through different organisms of an ecosystem. All organisms are dependent for their food on producers, either directly or indirectly. So you first a unidirectional flow of energy from the sun to producers and then to consumers. Is this in keeping with the first law of thermodynamics? Further, ecosystems are not exempt from the second law of thermodynamics. They need a constant supply of energy to synthesize molecules. They require to contract the universal tendency towards increasing disorder lines. The green plant in the ecosystem are called producers in a terrestrial ecosystem. Major producers are herbaceous and woody plants. Likewise, producers in an aquatic ecosystem are have various species like phytoplankton, algae, and higher plants. You have read about the food chains and webs that exist in nature, starting from the plants or producers. Food chains, or rather webs, are formed such as an animal feeds on a plant or another animal, and in turn is food for another. The chain or wave is formed because of this interdependency. No energy that is trapped into an organism remains in it forever, and the energy trapped by the producer hence is either passed on to a consumer, or the organism dies. A death of organism is the beginning of the detritus food chain web. All animals depend on plants directly or indirectly for their food needs. They are hence called consumers and also heterotrophs. If they feed on the producers, the plants, they are called primary consumers. And if the animals eat the other animals, which in turn eat the plants on their produce, they are called secondary consumers. Likewise, you could have and tertiary consumers too. Obviously, the primary consumers will be herbivores, Some common herbivores are insects, birds, and mammals in terrestrial ecosystem, and mollusks in aquatic ecosystem. The consumers that feed on these herbivores are carnivores, or more correctly, primary carnivores. Through secondary consumers, those animals that depend on the primary carnivores for food are labeled secondary carnivores. A simple grazing food chain GFCs is depicted below. Grass to goat to man. The detritus food chain DFC begins with the dead organic matter. It is made up of decomposers, which are heterotrophic organisms, mainly fungi and bacteria. They meet their energy and nutrient requirements by saprotrophs. Now, sapro how to decompose. Decomposers secrete the digestive enzymes that break down dead and waste materials into simple inorganic materials, which are subsequently absorbed by them an aquatic ecosystem. GFC is the major conduct for energy flow. As against this is in the terrestrial ecosystem, a much larger fraction of energy flow through the detritus food chain than through the GFC. Detritus food chain may be connected with the grazing food chain at some levels. Some of the organisms of DFC are prey to the GFC animals, and natural ecosystem. Some animals like cockroaches, crows, etc. are omnivores. There's a natural interconnection of food chains make it a food web. How would you classify human beings? And organisms occupy a place in the natural surroundings or in a community according to their feeding relationship with other organisms based on the source of their nutrition or food. Organisms occupy a specific place in a food chain that is known as their trophic level. Producers place in the food chain that is known as their trophic level. Producers belong to the first trophic level. Herbivores primary consumer to the second, and carnivores secondary consumer to the third. Figure 12.2. The important point to note is that the amount of energy decreases at successive trophic levels. When any organism dies, it is converted to detritus or dead biomass that serves as energy source for decomposers. Organisms at each trophic level depend on those at the lower trophic level for their energy demands. Each trophic level has a certain mass of living material at a particular time is called the standing crop. The standing crop is measured as the mass of living organisms biomass or the number in a unit area. The biomass of a species is expressed in terms of fresh and dry weight. Measurement of biomass in terms of dry weight is more accurate. Why the number of trophic levels in the grazing food chain is restricted as the transfer of energy flows 10% long. Only 10% of the energy is transferred of each trophic level from the lower trophic level. In nature, it is possible to have so many levels: producer, herbivore, primary carnivore, secondary carnivore in the grazing food chain. Figure 12.3. Do you think there is any such limitation in a detritus food chain? 12.5 Ecological pyramids. You must be familiar with the shape of pyramid. The base of pyramid is broad and it narrows towards the apex. One gets a similar shape whether you express the food and energy relationship between organisms at different trophic levels. This relationship is expressed in terms of number, biomass, or energy. The base of each pyramid represents the producer or the first trophic level, while the apex represents tertiary or trophic level consumer. Top level consumer. The three types of ecological pyramids that are usually studied. The are pyramid of number A, B, pyramid of biomass, C, pyramid of energy. For detail, see figure 12.4, A, B, C, and D. Trophic level, number of individuals. 12.4a, pyramid of numbers in a grassland ecosystem. Only three top carnivores are supported in an ecosystem based on production of nearly 6 million plants. 12.4b, pyramid of biomass shows a sharp decrease in biomass at higher trophic level. 12.4c, on the inverted pyramid of biomass, small standing crop of phytoplankton supports large standing crop of zooplankton. 12.4d, an ideal pyramid of energy, observed that primary producers convert only 1% of the energy in the sunlight available to them into NPP. Any calculations of energy content, biomass, or numbers has to include all organisms at that trophic level. No generalizations we make will be not true if we take only a few individuals at any trophic level into account. So, a given organism may occupy more than one trophic level simultaneously. One must remember that the trophic level represents a functional level, not a species as not a basis of as such. A given species may occupy more than one trophic level in the same ecosystem at the same time. For example, a sparrow is a primary consumer when it eats seeds, fruits, peas, and a secondary consumer when it eats on insects and worms. Can you work out how many trophic levels human beings function at in a food chain? In most ecosystems, all the pyramids of number of energy and biomass are upright. That is, producers are more in number and biomass than the herbivores, and herbivores are more in number and biomass than the carnivores. Also, energy at the lower trophic level is always more than the higher level. And then the exceptions of this generalization, if you were to count the number of insects feeding on a big tree, what kind of pyramid would you get? Now add add an estimate of the number of small birds depending on the insects, as also the number of larger birds eating the smaller, that the shape of you would get. The pyramid of biomass in a sea is generally inverted because the biomass of fishes far exceeds that of phytoplankton. Isn't that a paradox? How would you explain this? Pyramid of energy is always upright and can never be inverted because when energy flows from a particular trophic level to the next trophic level, some energy is always lost as heat at each step. Each bar is in the energy pyramid indicates the almost amount of energy present at each trophic level in a given time or annually per unit area. However, there are certain limitations of ecological pyramids, such as it does not take into account the same species belonging to two or more trophic levels. It assumes a simple food chain, something that almost never exists in nature. It does not accommodate a food web. Moreover, saprophytes are not given any place in ecological pyramids, even though they play a vital role in the ecosystem. Say ecosystem summary. An ecosystem is a structural and functional unit of nature, and it comprises abiotic and biotic components. Abiotic components are inorganic materials, air, water, and soil, whereas biotic components are producers, consumers, and decomposers. Such ecosystem has abiotic and biotic components, species composition, and stratification. stratification are the two main structural features of an ecosystem based on source and of nutrition. Every energy occupies a place in an ecosystem. Productivity, decomposition, energy flow, and nutrient cycling are the four important components of an ecosystem. Primary productivity is the rate of capture of solar energy of biomass production of the producers. It is divided into the two types: gross primary productivity (GPP) and net primary productivity (NPP). Rate of capture of solar energy or total production of organic matter is called GPP. NPP is the remaining biomass or the energy left after utilization of producers. The secondary productivity is the rate of assimilation of food energy by the consumers in decomposition. When complex organic compounds of detritus uh, are converted to carbon dioxide, water, and inorganic nutrients by the decomposers. Decomposition involves three processes, namely fragmentation of detritus, leaching, and catabolism. Energy flow is unidirectional. First, plants capture solar energy, and then food is transferred from the producers to decomposers. Organisms of different trophic levels in nature are connected to each and movement of nutrient elements through the various components of the ecosystem is called nutrient cycling. Nutrients are repeatedly used through this process. Nutrient cycling is of the two types: gaseous and sedimentary. Atmosphere and hydrosphere is the reservoir for the gaseous type of cycle, carbon, whereas Earth's crust is the reservoir for sedimentary type, phosphorus. Products of ecosystem processes are named as ecosystem survive services. Example: purification of air and water by forest. इकोसिस्टम 12 नंबर का हमारा चैप्टर इकोसिस्टम, जिसमें हमने पहले से देखा इकोसिस्टम स्ट्रक्चर एंड फंक्शन, देन प्रोडक्टिविटी, देन डिकम्पोजिशन, देन एनर्जी फ्लो, देन इकोलॉजिकल पिरामिड्स, देन समरी. सो इकोलॉजी में हमने ये सब देखा. तो थैंक यू सो इकोसिस्टम में हमने ये सब देखा. थैंक यू सो मच फॉर वॉचिंग. प्लीज़ लाइक शेयर एंड सब्सक्राइब.